Valentine's Day is supposed to be about love, right? Candles, roses, maybe a nice dinner. But for me, it became something else entirely. Something I still can't explain. Something that keeps me up at night. This is the story of the date that turned into a nightmare. It happened a few years ago. I was living in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. I wasn't big on Valentine's Day, but my friends convinced me to give online dating a try. I matched with this guy. Let's call him Mark. He seemed nice, normal. We talked for a couple of weeks, and he suggested meeting up for dinner on Valentine's Day. I figured, why not? But looking back now, I should have noticed the red flags. He always avoided video calls. His stories about his life were just a little too vague. And when I asked to meet in a public place, he insisted on picking me up. Said he wanted it to be a surprise. I agreed. Big mistake. The night started off fine. He showed up right on time, driving this old, beat-up sedan. He was charming, polite, everything you'd expect. But there was something off. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes, and he kept glancing at me in a way that made my skin crawl. We drove out of town, down this long, deserted road. I asked where we were going, and he just said, "You'll see." The further we went, the more uneasy I felt. The road was empty. No streetlights, just the glow of his headlights cutting through the darkness. Then, the car started acting up. It sputtered, and the engine died. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere. Mark got out to check the engine, and that's when I noticed something strange. The woods around us were dead silent. No crickets, no wind, just this heavy, oppressive quiet. Mark came back to the car, his face pale. "We'll have to walk," he said. "There's a gas station up ahead." I didn't like the idea, but what choice did I have? We started walking, the crunch of gravel under our feet the only sound. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, behind us. I turned, but there was no one there. Mark didn't seem to notice. I tried to brush it off, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Then I saw it. A shadow, moving between the trees. Just a flicker, but it was enough to make my heart stop. I grabbed Mark's arm. "Did you see that?" He shook his head, but I could tell he was lying. His hands were shaking. We kept walking, but the footsteps followed. Closer this time. I could hear them, matching our pace. I wanted to run, but Mark held my arm tight. "Don't look back," he whispered. Then the whispers started faint, like someone was just out of earshot. I couldn't make out the words, but they were there, and they were getting louder. Finally, we reached the gas station. Or what was left of it. The place was abandoned, windows broken, the sign hanging by a single chain. Mark pulled out a flashlight and led me inside. "We'll wait here," he said. But I didn't want to wait. I wanted to leave. That's when I saw it. In the corner of the room, there was a figure, just standing there, watching us. I screamed, and Mark turned the flashlight toward it. But there was nothing there, just an empty space. Mark looked at me, his face pale. "We need to go. Now." We ran back to the car, the footsteps and whispers closing in behind us. The car started this time, and we sped away. I didn't look back. When we got to town, Mark dropped me off at my house. He didn't say a word, just drove off into the night. I never heard from him again. I tried to forget about that night. Told myself it was just my imagination. But a few days later, I found something on my doorstep. A single rose with a note that said, "I'm still watching. I called the police, but they never found anything. No sign of Mark, no evidence of anyone following me. But I know what I saw, what I heard. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear those footsteps, those whispers. I don't know who or what was out there that night, but I do know this. It's still out there, watching, waiting. Happy Valentine's Day.